I want to put things a little bit in the perspective of Romania and Romanian users when we talk about users of banks, right? When we talk about AI and how you interact with the banks. Because there's a big question mark, like, do you trust banks to use digital advanced technology tools like AI? And in the share of wallet study that we've done this year, that I showed a couple of insights from yesterday, we've actually asked and addressed this question, like, do Romanians trust banks more if they use AI or not? Now, the context of the study and the context of this trust in banks using AI, I want to repeat a couple of insights that I showed yesterday. I believe we live in a market in which loyalty towards a bank is slightly decreasing, not necessarily because people wake up in the morning and say, I don't think I'm that loyal to my bank anymore, but it's because of the diversity of options you have out there and the simplicity of simply going on your laptop or on your phone and opening up a new bank relationship. And this is why it's a context in which consumers look more and more for opening a new bank relationship, or declaratively say, I would be willing to open a new bank relationship. They would also be willing to close a bank relationship if something bad happens. And they're less and less willing to consolidate everything to a single bank. So this is the context. And this is the context in which we also asked consumers, well, how does a bank's usage of advanced digital technology like AI impact your confidence in it? It was asked in Romanian. We were very careful how to phrase this question in Romanian in a very objective, relevant way for the vast majority of respondents out there. 2,000 respondents behind this image. So quite relevant, I think, for the Romanian banking landscape. And there's a very diverse perspective. About a third would say, yes, I would have more trust or a lot more trust in my bank if it would use advanced technologies like AI. About a third would be quite neutral, and about a third would say, no way, I would trust it less, right? I think it's very diverse, and it's very interesting to see two perspectives. What's behind different banks, respondents, and what's behind the profile of those purple customers who actually would trust more their banks using AI. If you look at across the banks, in Romania, there's not much difference between them, actually. So you don't have a particular bank or few banks which would benefit from much higher trust if they would use AI in their own customers than others. It's quite relatively similar dispersion of results. That's one interesting insight that I find. And the other one is I'm going to put this nice slide with a profile of which are the Romanians who actually would trust their bank to use AI. And I think the, let's say, apparently obvious answer would be, it's younger people, digitally, tech-savvy, always on their smartphones, always trying out new things in the technology space. It's actually quite opposite, not by a far distance, but it's actually, we see, at least in such a quantitative survey, a higher proportion of those above 35 years old trusting more banks using AI than the younger people. This is one very interesting thing. The other is, it seems that people that tend to use more banks, so 3, 4, 5 banks, trust their banks less in using, in using AI. And whereas you would work with just one bank, I mean, we have respondents who simply work with one bank, they trust their bank less in using AI. So, setting up this context, I think earlier we had, Ben, thank you very much, a very cool definition of AI. To me, it was very insightful because everybody understands AI in a bit different way. I think let's start also with, regarding this, let's start also with defining trust. I think it's very important. So, Carmen, I'm I'm going to address one simple question, which I think we're going to have a lot of discussion about. Given banks will continue to use AI, how will that influence customers' trust in banks and in banking services?
I think it's working, yes. It's worth starting to unpacking what it means trustworthiness. And I will refer to a definition that is quite established by an Oxford researcher, Rachel Botsman, who says, very simple, there are 4 characteristics of something to be trustworthiness. One has to do with competence. Are you good in what you are providing to do? The second is reliability, and you mentioned it, Ben. How many times you deliver what you promise that you are doing. The third is related to integrity. And the fourth, which speaks for itself, and the fourth one is empathy. Today and yesterday was also used a lot, empathy. And empathy matters in the context of trustworthiness because it matters why you do what you do. To be empathetic towards someone, it means that I can understand your perspective, but what do I do with the information that I'm gaining by being empathetic? This also matters. So as a bank, I can use the understanding about the customer just to push and to sell aggressively more products, or I take a long-term view about the situation of the customer to provide something to it. And unpacking the trust along these 4 dimensions matters no matter what products or services we try to provide. And very important, it's also to remember that trust must be constantly earned by everyone. The power is always with the customer, with the person who gives trust, who places the trust in the bank. And permanently, no matter where we are speaking about the AI times or previously where technology played a different role in banking, it matters to, it's not about gaining, it's about earning the trust of the customer.
Alec. Does it work? Yeah, it does? Yeah. So first of all, I'm an anthropologist, so a little bit of an oddball here. And I felt very lonely until Ben spoke. So thanks for inviting me to this event. I will be also a little bit controversial. Everything that you heard up to now is wrong for the simple reason that it's only relied on data and questions. When you ask someone about AI, that person will always already give you a trust in her definition of what AI is in that person's mind. So a profile like that has a different definition of AI than a person who says that doesn't trust AI, right? So the question is, how does the public understand and perceive what artificial intelligence, technology, and so on is? And there are many understandings of that. I think, like many researchers in the domain, that it's a misnomer. It's a completely wrong name to it, and it gives, but it has real effects in the way people relate to it. Now, maybe we'll talk about this later. Trust, the question of trust. We should always remember then the history of money is the history of trust and how it's diffused in social and cultural environments. Money are about trust. Money historically were trustworthy because they were the value of the metal they incorporated in them. You had some reforms, you have the introduction of zero, you had the negative balances and the banknotes. The banks were there to guarantee that when you go to the banknote, you receive back the gold, or the value that was attributed to the material side of it. And that's why I liked when you talked about the materiality of AI. Matter matters. Yeah. So what happens now is that sometimes banks forget that the technology and the product that they sell is trust itself. That's what you sell as a bank. You sell trust. You don't sell technology. You use technology to gain trust. Yeah. So how do you do this in the current context? That's the biggest questions. I don't have really one answer. There are many answers probably. It has to do with the design, with what different customers understand by trust, how they relate to that, how do they expect to receive the visual expression of trust, if you think about the screens, right? And if you want to sell them technology that has a screen interface, how do you make an interface that is trustworthy? Yeah? As well as all the other things that have been talked, and I'm sure you have something to say about it.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I share your reservation about some of the research. I think in my design research, if you ask people to make predictions, they generally aren't very good at giving them. I prefer to look at behaviors rather than, stated predictions and preferences. But I think the core of this for me is about building trust is about being obsessed with the outcomes. AI is just a tool, it's a material, it's just something we use. Think of it like a fork or a screwdriver. I don't know how useful it is to ask a lot of questions of consumers about it. But I would instead obsess with, what good means, what a good outcome is for a user. I want to give you just one quick tangible example of the one thing an organization did that gave me more trust than anything else. And it relates back to your factor of integrity, I believe was the one.
Yep.
So in the UK, the mobile phone market effectively operates like a cartel, right? None of the big players are actually that different from each other. And, you kind of swap network providers every now and again, and you get a nice new phone, but nothing really changes in the price environment. Nothing really is that different in the capabilities. But one provider called giffgaff started sending text messages to their customers once a month, and it would tell you whether you are spending too much money on your tariff or too little. So you should be spending more with us or you should be spending less. And what they were signaling to me was integrity. They were saying, we are prepared to sacrifice short-term profit for your long-term loyalty. And no organization has ever done that for me once. So if you ask me, how would you build trust? I'd do very, very brave things to gain your customers' trust that no one else in your market is prepared to do. Be obsessed with the outcomes that would make your customers' lives better.
Look, I share my share of reservations with regards to my research as well. I do consumer research. I do teach consumer research. So for sure, it's just a declaration. It's not of intent. It doesn't mean it will happen. But I think it's a good starting point to look at Romanians and see they're quite diverse. And just about a third today would say, yes, I would trust my bank to use AI. Now, if we do the same research 3 years from now, with the same statistical biases and errors and so on, I'm not going to ask you what's going to be the share, because it's irrelevant. I'm going to ask you, what should a bank do with AI and how it should do it to actually increase that percentage? So that 3 years from now, we have 70% of your customers saying, I trust my bank in how they use artificial intelligence.
It makes sense to start to the point that you said, obsessing about the outcomes for the customer. And reflecting on the points that have been also said earlier. And the jobs to be done for the customer have not changed for centuries. However, what is changing through time is the context where they are happening. So for a customer to define security, happiness, freedom today, which are 3 important dimensions, is different than it meant 40 years ago or 20 years ago when the iPhone didn't exist. So taking the customer perspective, how they achieve their independence from our security, from a financial point of view, it means to understand the full life context of the customers. And that's where the blend between using AI and technology at large, together with human interaction, adding the qualitative interpretation of it, can help actually to serve better the outcomes for the customer. It will be a huge help and complementary enabler for the banks going forward. I know many of the tech providers out there in the banking sector who go farther than me in saying the customer service is already totally transformed by AI today. Not all the banks are realizing this potential today or even thinking how to introduce it in their strategy. However, reflecting at the potential that it has, it goes in this direction.
Yeah, well, short answer, I don't know, because I have to do the research. I'm a researcher after all. I would change the question. I would sincerely change the question because I would orient it more towards what the public and the potential customers expect as services than to have it at this level of abstraction, because it's very abstract as a question. I would do qualitative research, not to bang on my drum, but you need to do as institutions and as financial institutions to understand better what comes before. The way you formulate the question prompts the answer. Yeah, and before the speech, there is the behavior. Yeah, and sometimes when people talk about their behavior, they tell you things that they think it's acceptable to be told about what they do. They will not tell you what they do. So having specific and refined tools of behavior observations are important. So that's what you can do as a bank to increase the trust. And as you know, the modernization of technology, of this kind of technology, meant, in fact, a lot of it means hiding the process. Yeah, the first computers, you kind of had to be in conversation directly with the computers, and so on. Now the process is completely hidden behind this flat screen that you kind of move with the fingers. Probably the same thing may happen with the bank. In fact, you hide the process and you don't say, okay, I'm using AI to obtain this product or this objective and so on, but I'm serving this kind of need that you have. And one more thing which is quite interesting, is that the tools, the AI tools and technological tools, are designed with a model of humanity that is very particular. It's the individual, the rational individual. And sorry to tell you, but it doesn't exist, right? We take decisions not on a rational based, mostly, or even always, but the models and the datified models work with this kind of assumption. And maybe it's there to work also at the level of design, and moving from rationality to relationality, because individuals are relational. Yeah, even when they look for bank products, they look for that in relationship with the context, as you heard in the first presentation, and also in relation with their social, family relations, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Just to echo what you said, when I worked with some folks at Monzo, an idea they have internally is that money is social, inherently social. I really like the way that they were thinking about it. I don't know that I've got tons to add, but I'll just try and do it really quickly. If we take the jobs to be done, those customer needs, those customer goals, then turn them into something really ambitious over the next 5 years, and be really, really push the boundaries of what's possible. So aim high, take a customer goal, aim high, and then just simply start to ask, how would AI help us get there? Is it even possible? It may or may not be, but that's what I would start to ask.
But you know, still, I agree. But if we make an abstract thinking, yeah, presume you have a budget of, I don't know, unlimited budget of money, resources, time, whatever. You need to choose one thing at a time to use such a technology to do something better for the customer. And for sure, the customer doesn't need to know it's AI. Customer will simply feel, like Gabi said, a much better experience, a much better product, a much better service.
Let me give it another try then. If it would be only one thing to pick, I would start by making sure that the CEO and the board in every bank would practice empathy at scale in the organization. And in that training, the empathy would be practiced simultaneously towards employees and towards customers. Because sometimes we favor one versus the others, or only the sales force, the employees in their branch are asked to be empathetic towards the customers, while at the highest decision level, it's the hardest actually to understand this dimension. So I would make sure that the top management level would understand this.
So it's basically a change effort, a change management challenge also, not just adopting stuff, right?
We talked a lot about adaptation and evolution in banking as well. Leadership in financial services needs to evolve in order to keep up with these developments.
Can I do a follow-up? Okay. Can I ask everybody to be really honest? Okay, I'm going to ask you to be really honest and not worry about what you look like, okay? Put your hand up if you have spent time with a customer in the last 2 weeks. Oh, that's pretty good, about half. How about your CEO? Same hands. Okay, not bad. Pretty good level of customer obsession. Yeah, that's pretty good. So my answer is, if you want to do that, I'll give you an abstract and a concrete. Build the machine that makes the machine, right? So be customer obsessed, empathize with your customer, build APIs that allow new possibilities to happen faster. That's building the machine that makes the machine. The second one, because you asked, right, what's a tangible example? Here's a thing in finance that I've often found myself stumped by. Like, I just get to a point where I'm like, shit, I need an answer on this, and I don't know where I'm going to get it. I need to be able to ask questions of my financial systems, not just my bank. So, for example, have I saved enough money to pay my taxes this year? So I would maybe start to survey questions that customers have that fall outside of the norms of what they normally think banking is around, yeah? And start to say, how might we serve that need in 5 years?
Yeah, if I can very briefly and echo everything that has been said, is probably also look internally at the way you evaluate success in a bank. What's your KPIs or whatever you work with? And maybe try to design KPIs that are not very quantifiable necessarily, yeah? Because that's how you build empathy, yeah? It's hard to measure empathy, but maybe not. Yeah, of course, the temptation is to transform everything in numbers, but not everything. As Alexander von Humboldt would say, the things that are important for the soul cannot be, escapes our measurements. So maybe you can think about that too. And also resist the temptation to act immediately, to react to whatever things you see on the market, and maybe think more about that. And I resonate with what you say about innovation. Hire people that are not goal-oriented. I mean, and on short-term goals, because to quote another German who was the teacher of Alexander von Humboldt, Goethe, who said, to act is easy, to think is hard, to act according to your thinking is troublesome. So get into trouble.
You know, Carmen, I like what you said about the, leadership and bankers needing to change and this change management perspective. Let me give you an anecdote, and then you guys transpose it to AI. So in the Middle Ages, when a doctor had a patient which he needed to do a surgery on, there was no sedatives, penicillin, anything. So when you typically had to, cut the leg of a person because, I don't know, the leg happened, something to it, there were different people holding the patient and the doctors cutting the leg live, and excuse the image I'm painting now. Now, when the penicillin was invented, it solved an obvious problem, the problem of the patient not having an infection anymore. But globally, it took tens of years to spread because it wasn't immediately visible. The benefit, the effect of it wasn't immediately visible. You had to study different patients, how they evolve in time, in weeks, in months, to realize, oops, there's something good about it. So it took tens of years. When the sedative was invented, because it made the life of the surgeon much easier, because it made the patient go to sleep immediately. You didn't have to hold him with 4 other guys. It took like about, that's the story, it took like about a few years to spread globally in every continent. Everybody was using it because it made the life of the doctor, in that case, the job to be done, much easier. So now you transpose this thinking to AI and banks using AI. Will it take boom, just like that, to realize a major benefit and everybody starting using it, leadership in banking, customers alike, or will it rather take, like it takes blockchain, tens of years to still prove it can be used usefully for something?
It depends. It depends on what kind of future every organization wants to build for itself. Either is a difference, just to be a follower and to go with the trends as they are. And if you've been a universal bank until now, you would say, will you remain a universal bank going forward? So my point is, there are many futures possible. So it matters towards what kind of future are you building, and along this way, you will decide what role AI and technology is playing for you. You may decide that you want to remain only a face-to-face type of financial service provider who has everything in the back, of course, digitized for our times. So it's very important towards what goal you optimize. The positioning matters in order to be successful, and of this depends the answer.
With that, I agree. Alec?
It definitely depends on many, many factors, not only internal to the bank, but also external. When you told the story, I remembered another story, luggages. Yeah, we have luggages, at least since 19th century. We have wheels for 20,000 years. Wheels with luggages together, they're very recent, if you think about it, right? Why? Well, one of the reasons is because nobody thought about it, but the necessity of thinking about it came when people start to carry their own luggages and didn't pay other people to carry their luggages. Yeah? Because where the innovation that didn't come from the people from the subalterns, yeah, came from the people who are directly interested in innovation. So that's why listening to the customer and having empathy, it's very important in innovation, and seeing that, well, maybe it's time to put wheels to the luggages, Walkmans, and so on. Second is that's a system theory thing that says that the quality of the intervention is in direct proportion with the state of the interveners. So the change that you're trying to kind of implement outside, the quality and the result of that change depends very much on what happens internally in the bank. So if you're thinking of a AI future outside of you, you have to understand also what happens inside. Yeah.
I really like your question. I think it's a really interesting one to look at historical changes. But I almost think, to relate back to my talk, that we should maybe look for analogous examples that are, as I pointed out in my talk, materials rather than end features or things. So would it be more interesting, and I have no idea, to look at the way the transistor changed things rather than a bandage, like being, you know, or cotton, right? Like the material itself, the thing that empowers products and new possibilities rather than the end state. I feel like, as you probably guessed from my talk, that looking at the conversational interface, obviously it's going to be very important in future, but it's kind of limited and narrow to look at only that. Yeah. So look at the material properties. Yeah.
Agree. But Carmen, back to what you said about, you know, it depends and about the market positioning and finding out strategically what different, you know, customer groups want and answering to those wants and needs. Again, a little bit of abstract reasoning. 10 years from now, do you think you will find a sufficiently sizable enough, economically sizable, attractive enough segment in the market to which you can address well with a banking service which doesn't use such technologies at all and is solely based on human interaction, even a little bit of use of pen and paper, but, you know, kind of the opposite of everything done automatically through a machine interface?
We left for the end the tough question.
I have another one, maybe tougher.
I'm just, as I was looking into your previous slides with the Romanian context, and I was thinking how much the cultural aspects matter in the fact that the Romanian customers work with more than 3 banks, while I'm based in Vienna, and it's very common that the users have 1.1 bank to say. So mostly they are very conservative and working with mostly of them with 1 bank. So here we see that probably this behavior will also happen towards the new players that will come to the market, and we will not have monogamous relationships in terms of financial services, but everyone will use multiple providers of services for this. That's one line of thinking that that I see out there. On the other hand, to deepen the relationship with your customers, to better understand them and to take them ahead to achieve their dreams, their aspirations, their desires, that's the situation where you definitely need to deal with the tension between being efficient to achieve that while providing it one-on-one, personalized for everyone. And these are considerations that also help to see faster adoption of AI in banking.
Alec, anthropology view.
Yeah,
Will that
anthropology
segment
view,
exist?
it's multiple answers. There are multiple scenarios, right? 10 years, it's already a lot in the rapidity of change these days. One thing I can see it possible is that some services, some customers will continue to ask for some services to be analog, and other services they would adapt very easy to, let's say, an interface that it's AI-based. Yeah, that's a possible. Another scenario is that the collapse of the network that is physical. You've seen some cables were cut, and in the kind of hybrid war situation we live today, there can be collapses in the infrastructure that would decrease the trust, in fact, in that, because if your interface doesn't show you anymore the numbers that you associate with money, your trust is like, okay, where's my money? So that's another possible answer. The utopian answer is everything will be smoothly in this kind of AI chip in the head type of society, or as the AI assistant that we've seen yesterday on the screen told us, that AI will make a better humanity.
And we'll lose our jobs. We have 1 minute left.
My question as an anthropologist is what is humanity and what is human. Because every culture, as you've seen yesterday, defines human differently. What is human and what is humane? So, you know, it depends on all these factors. And that's why you need anthropologists.
I'll just, one possible future has been touched on already, disintermediation. Banking becomes commoditized. There is a layer that we use personally to interact with all of our services. I think that might result in a situation that's similar to what happened to travel agents. Right? Travel agents are useful to people who want that human touch, the curation of their travel. They want something extra. They want somebody to talk to who feels human. But most of us can go and book a flight in 5 minutes ourselves. So it becomes, I could see a two-layer system of banking where some have high personal human touch and everyone else is kind of disintermediated. You're a commodity. That's one semi-likely future I see.
I actually agree with that. Many banking executives today actually think about that. What can I, you know, automate, do very simply for the customer? He will not care that he doesn't have a human touch.
Yeah.
And then which are those more complex services, advisory, financial, education, investment stuff for which I need to create the trust through a human, and I can do it better than just through a humane technology.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Florian. Great moderation.